So today we're going to be looking at 5 players the Indiana Fever could end up drafting in the WNBA draft.
The Indiana Fever is about to make a decision that could change everything. With the 8th pick in the 2025 draft, they're staring at 5 players who could be their savior or their biggest mistake. As we all know, the Indiana Fever underperformed last season. You may argue they made it to the playoffs for the first time in 6 years, but they struggled early on. With a generational talent like Caitlin Clark, they could have done much better and gone further, but now they are putting key pieces in place to propel them to a potential championship. First, they brought in a great mind like Kelly Krauskopf, who is all about business and making smart moves to improve the team's future.
You know, I'm a lifelong learner. I love the game. I mean, this is in my DNA. You know, everything about running a team, you know, running a basketball program, if you will. It's really who I am. It's my passion. And I think being able to leverage that experience, being embedded with Kevin Pritchard and Chad Buchanan in those daily meetings and talking about building the roster, it's very similar to what I did really for 18 years.
Secondly, they hired a new coach, Stephanie White, who is just exceptional. Not only was she an outstanding player, but she's also committed to building around Caitlin Clark. This was something the former coach, Christy Sides, unfortunately, lacked in her approach.
The margin for error is small. When you're building teams, it's not about always just getting the best players. It's about getting the best complement of players who fit well together, who play well with one another, who work to bring the best out in one another. You know, I believe truly in my heart that connected teams are winning teams. And so people who fit, players who fit the culture of the Indiana Fever and where we are and where we're moving towards.
Everything is in place for the 2025 season, but all eyes are on the draft day, April 15th, 2024. It's the day where we'll see which player might fall to the 8th pick for the Indiana Fever and change their future. Mind you, all of this hinges on one major assumption. Kelsey Mitchell stays and Nelisa Smith leaves. Losing Kelsey Mitchell, a core player for the Fever, would be devastating and create a huge challenge for the team moving forward.
But yeah, if they lose Kelsey Mitchell, the Fever are screwed. They're genuinely screwed.
Yes, it's like taking the engine out of a race car. Now this draft pick isn't just important, it's do or die. Are you ready to see who they might pick? Picture this. Azzi Fudd steps onto the court and everyone holds their breath. Remember when she was the talk of college basketball? That feels like ancient history now. Fudd stormed into UConn with a high school career that had scouts drooling. But fast forward to today.
I don't see her, if she goes in this draft, really going in the first round.
That's right, she's the biggest question mark in this draft, but if she can stay healthy, she might just turn into a brilliant pick. You're probably wondering what happened. Well, let's break it down.
Like, Azzi Fudd has played in 23 games in 2 years. She has played in 48 games. 48 games in college, and she's a senior.
You heard that right. In the last 2 years, Fudd has played just 23 games. That's it, 23. Can you believe it? It's like she's barely touched the court, and when she has played, it hasn't been pretty. Remember when Fudd's shooting was unstoppable? Now, it's a different story.
Since her freshman season, you're looking 34% from 3 through 15 games.
Her three-point percentage has dropped from 34% in her freshman year to a measly 28% recently. That's not just a slump, that's a nosedive. But here's where it gets really interesting. Fudd hasn't improved since her freshman year at all. Her points per game,
but she's only averaging 8.3 points. She only played 2 games last year.
Yep, 8.3. It's like she's been frozen in time while everyone else has been leveling up. Now, you might be thinking, maybe she just needs more time? But here's the thing, the Fever don't have that luxury. They need someone who can make an impact now, not a project player who might pan out in a few years. If the Fever picks Fudd, they're rolling the dice big time. They'd be betting on a player who's missed more games than she's played, which is a risky move for any team looking to build momentum.
She has played in 48 games. 48 games in college, and she's a senior.
That is not made up. In her entire college career, Fudd has only played 48 games total. That's not just unusual, it's a massive red flag that raises serious concerns about her durability. But wait, there's a twist.
Based on where they were, how good they were in high school, they'll get a lot of like extra coverage, especially if you were a UConn player.
Some experts think Fudd still has that magic that made her a top high school player. If she can stay healthy, and that's a big if, she might be able to turn things around. But is that enough for the Fever to take a chance on her potential?
A lot of people, because she was this highly ranked high school player, And we're seeing it with Paige Beckers, who's still the without question guaranteed #1 overall pick, and despite the fact she's not having the greatest year in the world in college.
So, what do you think? Is Fudd worth the gamble, or is she too risky for a team that needs a sure thing? Before you decide, let's see who else is on the board. Trust me, this draft class is full of surprises you won't want to miss. Now, imagine a 6'3" sharpshooter who can lock down on defense. Sounds like the perfect draft pick, right? But what if I told you this player won't step foot on a WNBA court for years?
Aisha Sivka is somebody that isn't going to be in, like, she can't play in the WNBA next season as a prioritization rules.
Aisha Sivka is that player. She's got it all. A deadly shooter, a solid shot blocker, and exactly the kind of defender the Indiana Fever desperately needs.
You've got Aisha Sivka, who is a 6'4", 6'3" sniper who can play a bit of defense.
At 6 feet 4 inches, she's taller than most guards, but moves like one. Her shooting? It's enough to make scouts drool. And her defense? It's the kind that gives opposing coaches nightmares. She's the type of player you build a team around. But here's where it gets...
Isn't probably ready to play in the WNBA right away. But she's 19. She turned 19 years old a couple of weeks ago.
Complicated. Sivka's only 19, and she won't be eligible to play in the WNBA until 2026. That's right, the Fever would have to wait 3 years before she could even suit up. Can you imagine drafting a player and not seeing them on the court for that long? Now, you might be thinking, but what if she's the next big thing? And you're not wrong.
She's that level of player. I just think that you can get a top 3 level talent at 8. If you're willing to just wait on her a little bit, and a perfect complementary player to Caitlin Clark.
Pairing Sivka with Caitlin Clark could be a dream come true for the Fever. Picture it, Clark running the offense, Sivka stretching the floor and locking down the perimeter. It's the kind of duo that could dominate for years. But here's the problem. The Fever need help now. They can't afford to wait 3 years for a player to develop, no matter how good she might be. It's like being hungry and planting an apple tree instead of going to the grocery store. Sure, you might have delicious apples in a few years, but what are you going to eat today? Drafting Sivka is a gamble.
It's just whether or not Indiana are willing to wait until, like, she's not going to come over next year. 2, I'm not even sure she's going to be ready in 2026.
It's like planting a seed in your garden. It might grow into something amazing, a tree that bears fruit for years to come, but it also might not, and even if it does, can the Fever wait that long? They need wins now, not promises for the future.
And she's that level of player. I just think that you can get a top 3 level talent at 8 if you're willing to just wait on her a little bit, and a perfect complementary player to Caitlin Clark. But the problem is you have to wait.
So as we think about Sivka, we have to ask ourselves, is potential enough when you're trying to win now? Can the Fever afford to take a chance on a player who won't contribute for years? Or do they need someone who can make an impact right away? It's a tough call, and one that could shape the future of the franchise. As we move on to our next prospect, keep Sivka in mind. Sometimes the most tempting options are the ones that come with the biggest risks. If you think the Indiana Fever need a flashy pick to turn things around, think again. Sonia Citron is climbing the draft boards, and her game might just be the perfect antidote to Indiana's woes. Let's dive into how this Caitlin Clark light could stabilize the Fever's shaky foundation. Citron's not just another name on the list.
Yeah, like, Sonia Citron is doing okay for Notre Dame. She's averaging 14, 5, 2.4 assists.
That's right. She's putting up 14.5 points and 2.4 assists per game. Not bad, right? But here's where it gets really interesting.
Her shooting is kind of coming back. Like, she was shooting 25% from 3 for a while. Now she's back up to 36%. And in fairness, like, when it comes to her 3-point shooting, she is... had a couple of, like, she's got her 3-point shot up a lot in game.
Her 3-point shooting has really gone from 25% to 36% this season. That's the kind of improvement that makes coaches sit up and take notice. Now, you might be thinking, okay, but is she really Caitlin Clark light? Well, let's break it down. Solid defense? Check. Improved shooting? Double check. Versatility on the court? Triple check.
She's a good off-ball defender. She makes it hard to get the ball if she's guarding you.
Citron's an off-ball defender who makes opponents feel like they're locked in handcuffs. She's even drawing comparisons to an established star, with some saying she might be even better.
I think I've said it from the start. I think she might just be a better Lexi Hull.
Can you believe some experts are calling her a better Lexi Hull? That's not just a compliment, it's a prediction. Citron could be that steady hand the Fever desperately need, especially if Kelsey Mitchell leaves. You might be wondering, is she just another role player? Here's the thing, in the WNBA, those consistent players are gold. They're the ones who keep the team afloat when the stars are having an off night. So is Citron exciting enough for a top pick? Maybe not in the highlight reel sense, but for a team like the Fever, she could be exactly what they need to stop the ship from sinking. Sometimes the safest choice isn't just smart, it's the game changer you didn't see coming. Let's get to Janiyah Barker. She's got scouts drooling over her size and athleticism. At 6 feet 4 inches, she's a force on the court, but here's where it gets tricky.
But she's shooting 18% from 3 on the year. She's shot in the 30s in other seasons of her college career, but she's still shooting 18% on the year.
Barker's shooting just 18% from beyond the arc. You heard that right. In today's WNBA, that's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, but don't write her off just yet.
But again, 10 points, 8 boards in 20 minutes is good. It is good. And she's shooting a very good percentage from inside the three-point line.
You heard that right. Barker's pulling down 8 rebounds and scoring 10 points in just 20 minutes of play. That's some serious production in limited time. You might be thinking, okay, but can she defend?
Was actually a good defender, can handle a little bit, is very, very fluid with her moving.
Well, that's where Barker really shines. Her size and movement make her a nightmare for opponents. Now, let's talk about Anissa Morrow.
She's currently averaging 18.3 points and 14 boards a game.
That is an insane stat. Anissa Morrow is a double-double machine, averaging 18.3 points and 14 rebounds per game. Sounds amazing, right? But here's the catch.
The only problem is that she's not shooting the 3-ball at all.
That's right. She doesn't shoot threes at all. In the modern WNBA, that's like trying to win a race with 3 wheels. But Morrow's not just about stats. She brings something the Fever desperately need: grit and energy. Every rebound, every loose ball, Morrow's there fighting for it. She's the kind of player who can change the entire culture of a team. So here we are. Fever fans, the future of your team is hanging by this draft pick. It's not just another name on the roster, it's the difference between climbing out of the basement or sinking even deeper. And let's not forget about Enlissa Smith. If she walks, this pick becomes even more crucial. We're talking about filling the shoes of a player who's been the heart and soul of this team. It's like trying to replace the sun in the solar system. Can you imagine draft night? The tension in the room as the Fever's pick approaches. Every fan holding their breath, hoping they don't mess this up. Because let's face it, one wrong move here and it's back to the drawing board. But get it right, you might just see the birth of a new era in Indiana basketball. Are you ready for the roller coaster?